Hey, good evening, everybody. I'm Luke Mortensen, planner with Planning Development Services. I will read through our required kind of Zoom spiel quickly, and then we will begin the meeting. Okay, like I said, good evening, Luke Mortensen, planner of Planning Development Services. I will be working with Catherine tonight. I'm obviously on Zoom. Catherine is at City Hall in our City Commission room. We will work alongside the chair to facilitate tonight's meeting's proceedings. Currently, everybody should be muted so that we can talk through the ground rules for tonight's meeting. This is being recorded and broadcast live on the city's YouTube channel and public access cable channel number 25. During the meeting, please mute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon. That is going to be in the lower left-hand corner of the Zoom menu next to the video icon. When you're muted, a red line will appear over that icon. This will make it easier for everyone to hear the meeting. Just remember to unmute if and when you want to speak. In the menu, you can also turn your camera on or off by clicking the video icon located next to that microphone icon. For the purposes of this public meeting, please keep your video on for the duration. If you're participating by phone, you can enter *6 to mute and unmute your phone. Somewhere on the Zoom screen, you will be able to see a choice between speaker and gallery view. Speaker view shows the active speaker, and gallery view tiles all the meeting participants. Be aware that our meetings do not include screen sharing. All attachments, reference materials, submissions from the public are included in tonight's agenda packet that is available online. A few reminders to ensure that the provisions of the Kansas Open Meetings Act are met. Members, you must state your name and title each time you speak. Members of city staff will also state their name and title each time they speak. I would ask that applicants and members of the public identify themselves each time they speak to ensure that everyone is able to follow along. Individuals who have signed up in advance to provide public comment remotely will be called upon by name. If you're called upon, please unmute your listening device and state your name before speaking. The chair will then call for in-person public comment for those who are physically present. All motions will need to be stated clearly. After a motion is made and seconded, staff will call on each board member individually to provide their vote. Staff will then announce whether the motion carried and the count of the vote. And last time, just as you're all aware, remember to mute yourself when you're not speaking. And at this point, I will turn it over to the chair to begin the meeting.
Thank you, Luke. Chairperson Bethany Falvey, good evening and welcome to the February 3rd Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. I'm going to ask staff to call roll, please, to determine if there's quorum.
Good evening, Catherine Week, Staff Liaison. Clark.
Here.
Falvey.
Here.
Gardner.
Catherine, he's joining us right now. I just,
okay, I'll come back to him. Herod.
Here.
Rankin.
Here.
Shalinsky.
Here.
Weisner.
Here.
And Gardner. Gardner, I think you're muted. Yeah, okay, here, you waving here. We have quorum, thank you.
The next section is communications. Are there any communications to come before the board?
Staff Liaison Catherine Week, we have no additional communications to come before the board.
Chairperson Falvey, is there any ex parte communications on or abstentions for specific agenda items? Seeing none, are any agenda items being deferred tonight?
Staff Liaison Catherine Week, we have no items tonight that will be deferred.
So our first variance that we'll be hearing during the public hearing portion is variance B-22-00012. And it's a request to seek a reduction from 25 feet to 0 feet and a reduction in depth from 12 feet to 6 inches to 0 feet. The property is located at 3515 Yale Road. I'll ask staff to present the case.
Good evening, board members. Luke Mortensen, planner with Planning Development Services Department. As Chair Falvey just noted, public hearing item number 1 is a variance from the required setback area for a wall, fence, or hedge where a rear yard abuts an interior side yard in a residential zoning district. The request is for the dimensions noted by Chair Falvey. It would be a reduction of that required setback area from approximately 313 square feet to 0 square feet. The property is located in the southeast corner of the Yale Road and College Boulevard intersection. I'll now briefly go through the criteria that are more thoroughly considered in the staff report that's available online. Criteria 1 focuses on the uniqueness of the subject property based on plating or zoning. The subject property is an approximately 11,475 square foot RS7 district lot. The lot was platted and recorded in 1986. Per Douglas County records, the existing detached dwelling was constructed in 1987. Both the subject property and the existing detached dwelling came into existence under the 1966 Lawrence zoning code. The subject property was one of 4 corner lots platted within the Holiday Hills number 16 plat. It's approximately the same size as the other corner lots in that Holiday Hills number 16 plat. Staff determined the rear yard to be the subject property's eastern lot line. The front yard is the subject property's western lot line along College Boulevard. The exterior side yard is the subject property's northern lot line along Yale Road, and the interior side yard is the subject property's southern lot line that abuts 1004 College Boulevard. These required yards were determined by a number of factors, including the subject property's building envelope, the underlying plat, and its relationship to adjacent properties. The location of a front door, a driveway, or a primary entrance does not determine a property's required yards and setbacks. You'll find a more detailed determination of this property's yards and setbacks in the staff report. The required hedge, fence, and wall setback is applied to all corner lots in the city's residential zoning districts that have abutting rear and interior side lot lines. The subject property's underlying plat is a conforming lot that does not exhibit conditions of uniqueness based on platting or zoning. Criteria 2 focuses on the potential adverse effects upon the rights of adjacent property owners or residents. In staff's opinion, the requested variance will not adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners or residents. A reduced setback area would not restrict the adjacent property owners and residents from maintaining their existing detached dwelling land use. Staff did not receive any neighbor communications on this item. Criteria number 3 focuses on the unnecessary hardship standard. In staff's opinion, strict adherence to the land development code would not constitute an unnecessary hardship as defined by the land development code and included in the staff report. The proposed variance request is based on a design preference rather than an unnecessary hardship as defined by the code. The required setback area does not restrict the property owner from erecting a fence around the majority of the subject property's area and does not restrict or remove an owner's rights to continue using that subject property as a code compliant detached dwelling land use. Criteria 4 focuses on the adverse effects on public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, or general welfare. In staff's opinion, granting the requested variance may adversely impact those above listed items. The required setback area is intended to maintain a generally clear and unimpeded setback area where a rear and interior side yard meet. Keeping this area clear ensures that adjacent property owners have clear sight lines and safe vehicle access to and from the right-of-way, as well as ensuring both vehicle and pedestrian traffic moves safely through that right-of-way. And then finally, criteria 5 centers around the general spirit and intent of the code. In staff's opinion, approval of this variance is inconsistent with the general spirit and intent of the land development code. I did a brief search through our BZA records this afternoon and could not find a similar variance request. However, this variance process must be used to equalize development and property rights rather than mitigating design challenges and preferences. To conclude, staff recommends denial of the requested variance to reduce the required setback area for a wall, fence, or hedge where a residentially zoned rear yard abuts an interior side yard for the lot address as 3515 Yale Road. Our applicant and property owner is with us tonight to answer any questions. And then as always, I can answer questions as well. Thank you.
I'll open it up for board discussion.
So we can, Board Member Gardner, so we can ask questions of the staff or the applicant right now?
Board Member Falvey, yes, that's correct.
Okay. All I see.
Board Member Clark, typically we let the applicant present at this point in time and give a presentation from their point of view.
Chairperson Falvey, would the property owner like to speak to this?
I would be pleased. Thank you very much.
So it seems to me that
Can you hear me?
even if you had only
I'm assuming you can.
5 or
Yes.
10
Good. Thank you very much.
sources,
I do appreciate the opportunity to come before you, and Mr. Mortensen has worked closely with me over the last couple of months as we investigated this. I was not aware of the setbacks until such time as I had begun working with a fencing company, and they fortunately put me in contact with Mr. Mortensen. I understand the principles, and I certainly understand the logic and the reasoning of the staff report. Quite clearly, the world will not come to an end if the variance is not granted. I have outlined in my presentation why I think it is a reasonable thing to do, and I don't believe that it would cause undue hardship to any of my neighbors. And in fact, in many ways, it complies better with the spirit of the zoning requirement than perhaps the letter of the law does. If you would look at the exhibits, there is an aerial photo of the property, and in that aerial photo there's a blacked out area or red out area of where the setback would occur. What we are asking for is to go to the full rectangle. Part of the problem is, as you can see, there's a tree in that particular place. In order to erect the fence, then we would need to move all of the fence back behind that red area to the driveway. And I understand the principle that just because your front door and your driveway and your house faces a road does not necessarily mean that that is the front part of the house. It is dependent upon the plat and upon the original intention of the developer. The reality is, however, is that the address is on Yale Road and not on College Road. And the house is oriented in that way. So in reality, the setback does affect part of my front and side yard rather than the backyard. But again, I'm more than happy to answer any questions and certainly understand the importance of the zoning process and would be more than willing to help in any way I can. Thank you.
Chairperson Falvey, thank you. I'll open it up to the board for discussion. Chairperson Gardner? Or board member
Yes.
Gardner?
Yes, sorry, I was muted. There was somebody else talking when the applicant was speaking. So if everybody could mute. I didn't get everything he said, but I want to ask him some questions. Everything that I see on the report shows basically a square fence around the whole yard. I don't think that that's what the applicant's looking for. So
No.
I really hope that the applicant can describe compared to one of the report pictures
Yes,
where the fence is that they actually want to build?
I would be very happy, and I'm very sorry that detail was not included. It's obviously very confusing. The fence would begin, if you look at the aerial photo, the fence would begin on looking down the right side of the garage, go out to either the blue line or to the back of the red box, depending upon your action today. It would then move to the right, that is to the east, to more or less the property line. And then it would continue to what I consider the back of the property, what the plat considers the side of the property, and then go to the corner of the house, to a distance equal to the corner of the house. You can see that there's a small hedge that's located about 15 feet to the south of the southwest corner of the house. The fence would go along the inside of that hedge and then connect to the house at the southwest corner. That would be it. There would be no fence on the west side of the house, that is on the College Road side, and there would be no additional fence on the front of the house. That's on the Yale Road. The only part that we're really actually talking about is between the garage and the property line on the east side of the house. Thank you very much for asking.
Hey, John, this is Luke, Planning Development Services. Is there somebody on the phone in the background? I think that's where some of the feedback is coming from.
I'm sorry, we've got two meetings going on here.
You're free to use it or
Yes,
not.
there's
We can
another
make do.
person
We can make
talking.
do.
I'm sorry, there is another person talking in the room.
Okay, that's where the disruption is. I went to, this board member Gardner again, I went to look at the property, and on the east side, there is a fence, and it looks like your proposed fence would be right along that same chain link fence. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you very much. I have spoken to my neighbor, and he is more than willing to share a fence so that we won't actually have two chain link fences that would abut one another. That causes problems for everybody. So with his approval, we would run a single chain link fence along that eastern edge of the property. The fence that I'm proposing would also be a chain link fence. I'm hoping to have a black vinyl clad chain link fence.
No, that's a good choice because they kind of disappear when they're set up compared to the standard kind of a fence. So the purpose of the fence, you have a pet?
I do. We have a dog, Chloe, and we would very much like to have her fenced in
From some
for
colonel to like
obvious
the
reasons.
staff writer in the Corps saying, don't talk about this.
So
But it at least allows you to sort of speak to.
are we kind of doing a discussion, Madam Chairman, so I can just discuss, and that would be part of the board's discussion?
Chairperson Falvey, that's where we're at in the meeting.
Okay, great. I went to look at this property, and based on what the applicant is describing, with a fence basically that comes out the back from the west corner, southwest corner of the house, it wouldn't go very far. That would be a teeny backyard, and then goes around and comes up and into the front yard. Based on what I saw, it would have zero impact on vehicle visibility, on pedestrian visibility, no safety issue whatsoever. I'd like to start with basically with condition 1 and talk through those if that's all right with you.
Chairperson Falvey, I think that's a good idea.
So the property was originally platted on College Boulevard. And I believe that it is unique because among those platted homes on College Boulevard, which this is one, it is the only one, otherwise unique, where the house is oriented towards Yale Road. And it's even got a Yale Road address. So, and the other thing that the report identified, the staff's report identified, is that the buildable area, because of the way, let me go back to the property owner. Are you the original owner, or is this a recent purchase?
No, I am not. I'm now the second owner.
Okay, so this owner did not make the choices that had the house oriented towards Yale. And because it is oriented towards Yale, the staff's report points out that its buildable area is significantly smaller than all the others. And because of those two things, I think that we can meet the unique requirement of condition 1. The staff already found that condition 2 is met and does not adversely affect the adjacent property owners. As for condition 3, the current owner didn't build the house oriented the way it is. And basically the way it's oriented, it made it completely almost useless backyard, unlike all the other neighbors who have a significant backyard where a fence could be built without any problems related to setbacks. Therefore, viewing the property in its own environment, to me, it's impossible for the owner to build a reasonably sized fence, fenced-in yard for his dog within the setback limits. So I think then for condition 3, this constitutes an unnecessary hardship. As for condition 4, the staff report mentions the impact of a 6-foot fence. Sir, what size, are you planning to build a 6-foot fence?
No, it would be a 4-foot chain link,
Okay.
black, as I said before.
Okay, so even if it was 6 foot, but it's not going to be, it's going to be 4 foot apparently, it would have no impact on vehicle or pedestrian visibility. Is not a safety issue whatsoever. And so to me, because it doesn't affect those sight lines, it will not adversely affect public health and safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, or the general welfare that's required to meet condition 4. So I think it meets condition 4. Finally, as for condition 5, granting this variance won't be opposed to the general spirit and intent of this chapter, because it's not the intent of the code to make it impossible to build a reasonably sized fence for a dog. And based on that situation, a situation not created by the current owner, I think it fits in and meets the condition 5, which is the general spirit and intent of the chapter. So I would, I don't want to shortcut any discussion that others would like to have, but I'd make a motion that the board approve the variance to build a 4-foot chain link fence on the corner lot at 3515 Yale Road. where its rear lot line abuts a side lot line in a residential district by reducing the requested setbacks to 0 feet, as this request meets the 5 conditions in section 201309 G1 in the Land Development Code. And if, okay, let me stop there.
Chair Falvey, Luke Mortensen, Planning and Development Services. If I may jump in before the discussion continues, I do just want to, I think, maybe clear up a point in the staff report that might have been misinterpreted. The house directly to the west, 3603 Yale Road, is actually the exact same situation as the subject property, where even though it fronts Yale, it's built within the building envelope of a lot that is oriented and platted towards College Boulevard. And so I want to make sure that that's clear. And then the point about the building envelope was kind of supporting evidence to where the lot is oriented. If the front yard is considered Yale for building envelope purposes, that's when the building envelope is reduced significantly compared to the other Holiday Hills lots. And that's, staff believes, it is not the case. So just wanted to make those points to hopefully make the discussion a little bit more clear.
So, and one final question for the staff: is the only issue for this variance the little red square?
Luke Mortensen, Plan Development Services, correct. That square area is the required setback area that would be off limits for a wall, fence, or hedge.
So if that is taken out, where would the fence be? Would it be on the
It would be along the edges of that red square. So instead of the teal property line, it would follow the teal property line, but just could not be in that red square area. It would have to be on the edges of the red square.
Okay. All right.
On the inside edges of the red
Correct.
square, rather. Thank you.
Correct.
This was Board Member Harrod.
Chair Falvey, I saw that Nathan had his hand raised, so we'll start with him next.
This is Board Member Clark, and I was just making a motion. I was going to ask for more time for discussion. I'm not ready to act on that motion made by Board Member Gardner. So
Yeah, that's what I meant by not wanting to short circuit discussion, Nate. Sorry about that.
This is Board Member Harrod. And Madam Chairwoman, could we also ask if there's any public comment to make sure we don't miss anybody that might have showed up online?
Chairperson Falvey, do we want to finish board discussion before we move to public comment?
Chairperson, I mean, typically what we do is we get all the comment in the bag. So we have the staff go, applicant go, and then we ask if there's any public comment, and then we bring it back to the board for general discussion. So we've had some discussion, which is permissible, but I would just like to know if there's anybody else here that has any information that wants to know before we take our discussion any farther.
Chairperson Falvey, Board Member Weisner.
Sorry, I just have my question is incredibly simplistic. I apologize. I am still not exactly clear where the fence is on the property. So I don't know if that is the applicant or the staff to explain that, because I've got all these different maps and I just don't completely understand where the fence is going.
Again, in the ideal world.
Luke Mortensen, Planning and Development Services staff. On page 8 of 18 of the agenda, there is a map that has 3 colors. It has red, orange, and yellow. And those are the lines of where a fence could be placed. To my knowledge, and John, the property owner, can correct me, there is an existing fence along the eastern property line that belongs to the neighbor. And I believe that's the only fence that is there at today. Does that help?
This is Board Member Harrod. So you're talking about figure 13, right, Luke?
Let me check. Correct, figure 13.
And you just said there's a fence along the eastern property line. Are we talking about the eastern, or is that the western property line?
So eastern would be on the right side of that image. And John, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'm turned around. I apologize.
This is Board Member Clark. And just to clarify, the applicant does not want that fence. He wants a fence that it would be a square of the entire plot line.
No, Board Member Gardner. If you look at that picture on figure 13, the description he gave starts with a fence at the lower left-hand corner of the house, goes south to the pink line, then goes east through the green line, north along the east, and then he wants to go past the tree so that little block, that little red block that we saw in another picture, then it goes over to the driveway and then back to the top right corner of the house. So he's not building a fence in the front yard or in the yard that's to the west. It's basically a little teeny backyard fence, and then the main area would be on the right side or the east side of the house.
This is Board Member Clark. Thank you, Board Member Gardner, for that clarification. I think the only comment that I would have at this point is just to remember that these variances go with the property and not with the project. And so, a setback to 0 for a 4-foot tall invisible fence would also apply to a covered garage, awning, and gym addition off the east side of the house, if someone in the future wanted to do that.
Yeah,
And
so
that's actually, Board Member Gardner, that's actually why I said in the variance request to build a 4-foot chain link fence, not those other things. So it was a way of qualifying it by saying that.
this is Staff Liaison Catherine Wake. I'm going to try to simplify this if I can. What you all are discussing this evening is just that corner notch out. So even though there's an image where the potential resulting from your decision could be that a fence would to go on all of those colored lines, what you're determining this evening is just whether or not any fencing could go in that corner notch where it's set back 12 foot 6 inches and 25 feet. So only that little corner is what you are considering today. And that is the required area that is supposed to be free and clear from fencing, walls, or hedges. So hopefully that can kind of streamline the discussion, because I know looking at the overall property, it does look like the applicant is asking for fencing on all of the lines. The result of your decision could be that the applicant is able to put a fence on all of those lines, but really what you're deciding this evening is just that notched corner there, whether or not any fencing could be in that area.
This is Board Member Harrod. Could I clarify, is what the general suggests permissible? Are we just being asked right now to give a variance for a fence or wall or something? And because Board Member Clark was advising something else might be able to sneak in under this variance.
This is Board Member Clark. I was wrong. I misread the intro here.
However, Board Member Clark is right that a variance does go with the land. So just because this particular applicant is asking for a chain link fence, if you were to grant a variance from that corner of that property, then yes, another type of fence could in the future be erected in that space.
But can we, Board Member Gardner, can we make it, that's why I read it into my motion, but can we make it, what do you call it's a limit thing. We sometimes add to motions. variances.
Luke Morrison, PDS. So it sounds like you're asking if you can modify it with some
Yeah.
form of condition.
Yes, modified condition.
So your role, you can approve the variance, you can approve the variance with a condition, or you can deny the variance. Those are your three options.
Okay, then I would want to change my motion to
So this is Staff Liaison Catherine Week. So just as a process question, there was a motion that was on the table. And so process-wise, once discussion is over, I believe the chair would need to ask for a second. If no second is granted, then, or you could table the motion and then remake another motion. But I think.
Board Member Shalinski, there was not a second
Correct.
to the motion. So it seems to me that the maker of the motion could change it at this point, pending then somebody seconding what.
Staff Liaison Catherine Week, I believe that motion maker could withdraw the motion since there has not been a second.
Chairperson Falvey, Board Member Gardner, if you're wanting to change your motion, maybe we withdraw it, go to public comment, and then we can talk about another motion. Does that sound okay?
absolutely. Board Member Gardner withdraws the motion.
Chairperson Falvey.
I have one more question. Sorry for staff. I've been trying to get this in. I apologize. Just so I'm clear, and I'm going off of figure 13, I'm still wanting to make sure I understand the nature of why the variance is needed. So using that diagram, and I'm going off of let's just use the yellow line above the 25-foot number, so north of that. If the fence stopped there and went back to the west, there would not need to be a variance requested. Is that correct?
Luke Mortensen, Planning Development Services. Yes, if the fence followed that yellow line and was in the exact same location, no variance would be required. It could be a maximum of 6 feet.
Okay, thank you. That answered my question. I appreciate it.
Chairperson Falvey, staff, is there anyone in person from the public?
Staff Liaison Catherine Week, there was no one in City Hall to speak to this item.
And is there anyone on the call that's requested to speak on this matter?
Luke Mortensen, PDS. I am not seeing any Zoom commenters.
Okay, Chairperson Falvey, let's bring it back to board discussion. Did anyone want to start?
Board Member Gardner, I'll make another motion that the board approve a variance at 3515 Yale Road, where its rear lot line abuts the side lot line in a residential district by reducing the requested setback to 0 feet, as this request meets the 5 conditions in section 201309 G1 or G1 in the Land Development Code with a, what do we call it? I'm sorry, modification condition.
Luke Mortensen, PDS, a condition of approval.
Thank you. With the condition that it only be a 4-foot chain link fence for which the variance is approved. And if I said that wrong, help me say it right.
Chairperson Falvey, do we have a second to that motion?
Board Member Shalinski, I will second it. I went and had a look as well and came to the same basic conclusions as General Gardner.
Chairperson Falvey, we have a motion and a second. Staff, can you call roll, please?
Sure. Staff Liaison Catherine Week. Clark?
No?
I'm sorry, I did not hear that. Clark?
No?
Okay, thank you. Falvey?
No.
Gardner?
Yes.
Harrod?
No.
Rankin?
No.
Shalinski?
Yes.
Weisner?
No.
The motion does not carry.
Chairperson Falvey, does anyone else want to make a motion, or do we want to go back to discussion?
This is Chair Member Clark. A no is not a negative response, is it? I forget that rule. Okay, then this is Board Member Clark. Pending no more discussion, I move that we deny the variance request based on discussion of the board.
Board Member Weisner, second.
Chairperson Falvey, we have a motion and a second. Staff, could you please call roll?
Sure. Staff Liaison Catherine Week. Clark?
Aye.
Falvey?
Yes.
Gardner?
No.
Harrod?
Aye.
Rankin?
Aye.
Shalinski?
No.
Weisner?
Aye.
The motion carries.
So just Board Member Gardner, one final clarification. So they can build a fence, they just have to build it shorter.
Yes, Staff Liaison Catherine Week. They can still build a fence. They just would not be able to put it in that little corner.
Okay. Thank you.
Chairperson Falvey, I don't see anything on the agenda under miscellaneous. Is that correct, staff?
Staff Liaison Catherine Week, that is correct. The only miscellaneous item I was going to inform you is that we will have at least one item on the BZA agenda for next month.
Chairperson Falvey, thank you. Now we need to adjourn the Board of Zoning Appeals. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Board Member Weisner.
Board Member Gardner, second.
Chairperson Falvey, we have a motion to adjourn the Board of Zoning Appeals and a second. Staff, could you read the roll, please?
Staff Liaison Catherine Week. Clark? I'm sorry,
Yes.
Clark? Oh, sorry.
Aye.
Falvey?
Aye.
Gardner?
Aye.
Harrod?
Aye.
Rankin?
Aye.
Shalinski?
Aye.
Weisner?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Chairperson Falvey, I'd like to convene as Sign Code Board of Appeals. Staff, do we need to call roll again?
Yes, we will need to call roll just in case someone steps in or out.
Can you call roll for convening as the Sign Code Board of Appeals, please?
Staff Liaison Catherine Week. Clark?
Aye.
Falvey?
Aye.
Gardner?
Aye.
Harrod?
Aye.
Rankin?
Aye.
Shalinski?
I'm present.
Weisner?
Aye.
Yes, we have quorum. Thank you.
Chairperson Falvey, is there any communications to come before the board?
Staff Liaison Catherine Week, we have no additional communications for the Sign Code Board of Appeals.
Is there any ex parte communications or abstentions from the specific agenda items? Seeing none, are there going to be any agenda items that will be deferred tonight?
Staff Liaison Catherine Week, we have no items scheduled for deferral this evening.
Chairperson Falvey, the first item under public hearing of the Sign Code Board of Appeals is to consider a variance application SV-21-00432. And it's for a property located at 2000 West 23rd Street. And it's a request for a variance from the number of allowed wall signs and maximum allowed sign areas of section 5-1818B, permanent wall signs and commercial strip district. I'll ask staff to provide presentation on the agenda item, please.
Hi, good evening. This is Timberly French, permit technician for the City of Lawrence Planning and Development Services, here to present the request for variance for Rally House at 2000 West 23rd Street. Zoning is CS Commercial Strip. The request is the applicant would like to place 3 wall signs on the building wall. 3 illuminated wall signs on the south building wall with a total sign area of 216 square feet. The sign code allows 1 sign per tenant on wall with exterior public entrance to tenant space that fronts a shared parking area, which is on a multi-tenant building. The applicant would like to place 3 wall signs, and code allows 1. The sign area, the code allows 10% of the building wall area or 150 square feet, whichever is less. There is a setback allowance, an increase to the maximum wall area allowed if the building wall is set back from the public right-of-way at least 100 feet. The tenant space occupied by Rally House on the south elevation has a building wall area of 1,872 square feet, and 10% of that is equal to 187 square feet. However, the maximum sign area is 150 square feet or 10% of the wall area, whichever is less. The south wall area occupied by Rally House does not face a public right-of-way. It faces another building, so there's no public right-of-way, so it's ineligible for the setback increase. The building, the location of the signs would be on a compliant wall facing a public right-of-way, or not a public right-of-way in this situation, but code allows walls on signs on a wall that faces a public right-of-way or parking lot or other open space under the same ownership with at least 50 lineal feet between the building wall and the next nearest building. So the sign location would be compliant, and code does allow illuminated wall signs for this zoning district. The criteria for approval for variance is number 1, at a time a variance is requested by the board shall find that the variance request arises from conditions that are unique to the location in question, which are not ordinarily found in the same zoning district, and that the unique conditions are not caused or created by an action or actions of the property owner or applicant. Number 2, at the time a variance is granted by the board shall find that the granting of the variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare, including the visual appearance of the area, or injurious to the property or improvements in such zoning districts or the neighborhood in which the property is located. And at the time, number 3, at the time a variance is granted by the board shall find that the strict application of the requirements of Section 18, Chapter 5 of the City Code would result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships to the owner or applicant, inconsistent with the general purpose and intent of the sign code. Such practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships may include compliance with amended provisions of the sign code that were not in effect at the time a predecessor sign was installed. So staff opinion is that the request does not meet the criteria for granting a variance. In the opinion of staff, conditions do not exist which are unique to the location and are ordinarily found in the same zoning district. The CS Commercial Strip District is primarily intended to provide for existing commercial strip development along the city's major arterial streets. It's not uncommon to find tenant spaces with wall areas exceeding 2,000 square feet per individual tenant space. The tenant directly east of Rally House, which is Crunch Fitness, has an elevation wall area of 4,000 plus square feet. The multi-tenant building located at 1801 West 23rd Street contains elevation wall areas exceeding 2,000 square feet per tenant space. The multi-tenant buildings located at 2525 Iowa Street and 2727 Iowa Street both contain elevation wall areas exceeding 2,000 square feet for individual tenants. The above mentioned locations have one sign per tenant on the building wall with an exterior public entrance to tenant space that fronts a shared parking area in a multi-tenant building. And they are all in the CS zoning district. The combined wall area for the three signs are approximately 69% larger than the maximum sign area allowed by code. The lot for which the multi-tenant building is located on is 3.57 acres and is eligible for a second monument sign at its secondary entrance facing or fronting a different public right-of-way than the first sign, which is located on the 23rd Street frontage. The secondary entrance is located on the Iowa Street frontage, so they would be eligible for a secondary freestanding sign there. In any non-residential zoning district, non-illuminated window signs that are mounted on the interior of a structure or applied directly to the interior or exterior of first floor windows between 2 feet and 12 feet above grade are exempt from the sign permit requirement. Additionally, illuminated window signs are also exempt if they don't exceed 12 square feet in area. And the storefront for the Rally House tenant space has numerous windows that could be used to meet the requested allowable number of signs and wall area. Number two, in the opinion of staff, the granting of a variance could be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements to the neighborhood. The granting of the variance to allow more than one wall sign per tenant in a multi-tenant building may result in similar requests in the area that could lead to a race for visual attention, which goes against the intent of the sign code. And number three, in the opinion of staff, the strict application of the requirements of the sign code do not result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships inconsistent with the general purpose and intent of the code. Clear and convincing evidence has not been provided to prove the prescriptive requirements of the sign code for the number of the proposed illuminated wall signs results in a practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship. Adhering to the prescriptive requirements of the sign code for the number of allowable wall signs and maximum sign area for the tenant space do not result in practical difficulties due to the additional options of signage available for this lot and tenant space, including a second permanent internal ground sign and window signs, which meets the goal of the governing body to permit effective and efficient identification and communication for commercial enterprises. And if Rally House and official KU store are separate tenants sharing a tenant space in a multi-tenant building, each tenant would be allowed one wall sign not to exceed 10% of the wall area of the wall visible in elevation view occupied by the tenant space. So staff recommends denial of the variance for the three proposed wall signs and the increase for maximum allowable sign area on the south elevation of the building. Because the conditions are not unique to the user and structure, the requested variance may possibly be detrimental to the public welfare, and strict application of the sign code regulations would not cause practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships to the applicant. Thank you.
Chairperson Falvey, thank you. Staff, is the property owner or sign company on the call to speak?
Yeah, I'm Brian Corser. I'm with Rally House. And then I have Jeff Grantham with Rally House, Paul Vanderteek with the University of Kansas, and Michael Schmidt with Infinity Signs on. A small contingent to speak on our behalf. Jeff Grantham was going to go first here.
Everybody hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Hello? Okay, thank you. No, first of all, thank you so much. We are pretty excited about this store. This is our 100th store and just happened to kind of be in our backyard for Rally House, but very, very thankful that we could put this in Lawrence. Rally House is unique. What we were trying to accomplish here is we are a partner at KU Athletics. We run all the sales inside of Allen Fieldhouse, and the store here, kind of with Paul Vanderteg, the licensing director at KU, that we decided to put together was kind of a KU superstore. So that was kind of the premise of this store. Is, you know, we've got Chief stuff, but this is really, you know, about 9,000 square feet with about 7,000 dedicated to KU athletics. And what has changed here recently with NCAA legislation is we've got a revenue share with KU on this store as well. So they are a partner. What has changed on legislation is this name, image, and likeness. So we're actually creating, I don't know if everybody's familiar with that with NCAA, where players can actually be paid off of sale of their merchandise. So basketball jerseys with a current player's name in it is all ready to go. So what we've done with KU, we've created inside our store kind of a store-in-store concept. I know Target partners with Starbucks. We're doing the same thing with KU on this, is kind of building a player store in there with player jerseys, player t-shirts for men's, women's basketball, football, and we'll kind of drastically expand that. That's kind of not that everybody cares on this. I'm sure there's some KU fans, but this is kind of the future of where it's going with recruiting and the welfare of getting athletes to school. So that was, and we see that as a huge opportunity for Rally House, being the largest generator of royalties for KU. We really think this is something that will really drive business and be unique to that center. You know, from the economic development standpoint, we think that store is going to do better than our one on Mass Street, and really drive a lot of money to the university, really drive a lot of traffic to the strip center. And actually, I think, you know, the golden concept was to kind of include KU's marks with that kind of KU superstore that we really think will be a benefit to the community. With obviously everybody a KU fan in town, we don't think that's going to, you know, push anybody away. But overall, I think that's kind of where we're at. I was aware we could do a second entrance. That's great. But I think, you know, from our standpoint is just how can we, you know, add a KU flavor to this to really tell people what we're trying to do. So, I mean, that's, Paul, do you want to add something to that?
Sure. This is Paul Vandertag. I'm Assistant Athletic Director for Trademark Licensing at the university. And really, I wanted to just be on record here that Kansas Athletics is partnering with Rally House. They are our exclusive game day sales partner, and we're hopeful that the board could see their way to granting the variance. We think it'd be beneficial in a couple of ways. One, so that fans understand that this is an official store destination, and that they are a game day, our game day outfitter, so to say. And I know the board has a lot to consider, and I understand that. And looking at, other properties that are close by, and they may be zoned differently, but I'm just as a layman driving by, I look across the street and I see CVS. They've got, maybe up to 6 other illuminated signs with their health hub and those kinds of things. And I want to just reinforce with this group that, and Brian will talk more to it, but the signage would be done in a really tasteful manner. And in no way do I think it would be injurious to the local fan base. In fact, I think it would be an attractant. And I think it's important for them to know that there is a relationship between Rally House and the university. And of course, one of the ways to let them know that is a sign. So I'll hold off. I'll hold off on anything else and let Brian Courser talk a little bit more specifically about the signs. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, again, it's Brian with Rally House. One thing we look at is when we look at a location are the sight lines and kind of what was there before as far as signage goes. And I know the previous tenant had quite a few signs on the side, and I know the sign variance has recently changed. So, I don't know that we were aware of that when we signed the lease, to tell you the truth, but just looking at the signs that we've had proposed, we do think they balance out the front of the building in a very tasteful way. We're also obscured from sightlines from 23rd and Iowa Street because of Freddy's. Our area kind of gets overlooked or lost because the size of the Crunch Fitness sign and the size of that building, it dwarfs basically what we have over in that corner. So that's why we're looking to increase the area of the signage and make it more visible from 23rd Street, as people can kind of see in between there, between Crunch Fitness and Freddy's. Hopefully we catch their glance. Is there another option on sizing that the board would approve? We're open to, listening to that. It's obviously we'd like to get past what we've submitted here, but Michael with Infinity Signs can talk more to that, more the technical side of it. So I'd turn it over to him.
Chairperson Falvey, Mr. Schmidt, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. My name is Michael Schmidt, and I represent Infinity Sign Systems in Kansas City, Missouri. We would be the sign fabricator and installer for the signs for Rally House, for the store that's being discussed tonight. And I think from what I heard Luke say earlier, and I'm going to have to ask a question, is it possible if I hold up a picture and show it, or does that have to be something that's already been submitted and it's on your agenda and in your paperwork?
Is the item in the reference materials, or is this a new item?
It would be a new item.
So Catherine, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we can consider new items since they've not been made available to members of the public.
Typically, that's accurate unless this part of the presentation the applicant is giving. We don't typically accept new materials for consideration just because it doesn't give the board or the public a chance to comment on those items if they're not aware of them. So,
okay. All right. I printed a couple pictures of some stores fairly close by to 23rd and Iowa and Lawrence, so I can describe them in words. And you live in Lawrence, you've been there a long time, you're probably familiar with them anyway, but I started doing sign work, consulting and sales in 1986 in Lawrence, so I've been doing it a long time, and I've seen a lot of stores up and down 23rd Street and very familiar with the signs that they had, and one of them was the Cork and Barrel that paid the same space. I think that probably was put there in 89 or 1990, and they moved across the street to what used to be Hobby Lobby, and they had their large Cork and Barrel channel letters on a cork colored background that was about 75 square feet, and then they had wine and spirits off to the left and the word gourmet off to the right, and a 7-foot by 20-foot changeable copy board on that angled wall that's kind of shared with Crunch Fitness. So they had quite a bit of signage, and I know that's on the old sign code, but it didn't look too obtrusive. It was tastefully done, and we feel like our signs for Rally House, Official Store, and Kansas Gifts are also tastefully done. And who doesn't like going to Rally House and buying a Jayhawk shirt? I buy stuff there all the time, and I think it'll really make this corner look wonderful and get a lot of business going into the city of Lawrence, and people will be flocking to the store. KU football games, basketball games, the KU relays, and all those wonderful sporting events our university holds. They're going to be selling all these branded products there. So I'm really excited about it. And I think the signage is not going to be anything obtrusive or injurious to the property. I think it'll spruce it up. The place has been empty for a couple of years. And we do have 300 feet of distance from the storefront to 23rd Street. And I know that because Freddy's is there, that doesn't give us the clear line of sight setback, but I think that's a reason to grant a request for more signage because you are so far back from the street. And these signs, official store and Kansas Gifts, are going to help us be recognized and seen as we're offering Jayhawk products to the city. So I think, in my opinion, I would ask that they get approved just on that alone. But so we're 300 feet back from the street. So, and then after I've said that, there's also some other stores like Hobby Lobby, and they have their crafts, home decor, and seasonal frames, their ancillary signage of different products they sell with their main signage. And then as I think Jeff mentioned, that Michael's has silk, floral frames, art supplies, crafts, and home decor. And I had pictures of all these, which we're not going to show, but you can do this in a tasteful way and not be too overpowering. And I think that's what we've shown with our design. So we've got 24-inch channel letters for official store and Kansas Gifts. And we've got a 3-foot 9-inch Jayhawk and a 3-foot 6-inch Sunflower. I just think they're really nicely laid out. And it's a nice symmetrical balance with the Rally House being in the middle. So we just ask that our variance get granted and we can get approved and be on our way to having a nice looking storefront. So I think that's probably about all that I would have to say. If anybody has any questions, I'm available for those. Thank you.
And this is Jeff Grantham again from Rally House. I think in total, Brian, don't we have we're at least at 500,000 in kind of getting that up to speed right now before we open. I think our expenditure is above that, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing that I don't want to be lost in this committee, there's not a whole lot of businesses that include KU marks legally around town. This wasn't not the easiest, but KU is very particular in letting their marks be used, which is Paul's job. But it was something I think that will really obviously help spruce up what we're doing, because again, it's a very unique mark that we're using there with KU that's not just everywhere. I mean, it's on campus, I get that, but off campus, there's not a lot of places that have it. So it's unique. I know even with what we've done there with our investment into that property, and again, it's been vacant for a long time. I know they're showing the CC's Pizza right now. Obviously, Rally House brings a ton of people to that shopping center and all our stores. We just think this just has a way to really kind of, it's the busiest intersection in the town. We think when we're going to be done with it, CC's Pizza should be rented here pretty soon. That this will be kind of one of the top corners in Lawrence for retail. And I think it would be a great addition to what we're trying to do. But I appreciate anybody. And again, we're open to any ideas here on how to accomplish this. These were just our ideas, but if anybody's got some other direction, please fire away. Thank you.
Chairperson Falvey, could I inquire of the applicant? This is Board Member Harrod.
Chairperson Falvey, yes, let's, if we have questions for the applicant, let's do that now.
Thank you. So the first is a question in general. So is the Rally House store, is it just going into the space that was formerly occupied by Cork and Barrel?
Yes.
Okay. And so it sounds like the space that was formerly occupied by CC's Pizza is going to be a standalone separate space rented for some other business. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So the store frontage that we're talking about there is the store frontage that previously belonged to Cork and Barrel. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And so I want to inquire specifically of Mr. Schmidt. So Mr. Schmidt advised us that the former occupant of that space, Cork and Barrel, had a large central sign, Cork and Barrel. Is that right?
Correct.
And then had signs to either side of that central sign, one being gourmet and the other being wine and spirits. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And those three signs were not connected to each other. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's probably 10 or 12 feet in between each one.
And those, in fact, were three separate signs on the front of the store. Is that right?
Yes, and they had a fourth sign as well.
And that was that changeable copy sign that you talked about. Is that right?
That is correct.
And that would be on the building that has, basically it's the building that Crunch Fitness is in, and that wall faces west. Is that right?
Yes, it's at a 45-degree angle into the southwest corner of the intersection, kind of pointing towards Freddy's, correct?
And does that remain, or is that's not something that you're going to use or asking to use, right?
No, that sign's been taken down and we're not asking to use that space currently.
Okay, thank you. I might have some questions later for the applicant, but I just wanted to make sure that I had that situational awareness before the board discusses.
Board Member Gardner, a question for Timberly. What again was the maximum size that they could build based on what you found?
Timberly French, permit technician. The sign code allows 150 square feet maximum for their particular tenant space.
And that was based on 300 feet from 23rd Street?
Incorrect. That would be measured perpendicularly from the face of Rally House. They do not have, they're not facing public right of way. They don't have a street frontage, so they face Freddy's. So technically by code, they are not eligible for a setback increase because they don't face 23rd Street. They face Freddy's.
But we can see what would be Rally House from both Iowa and from 23rd Street, correct?
Correct, yes. Code interpretation is we measure perpendicularly from the face of the building to, when we measure setbacks, we measure perpendicularly from the face of the building to the property line. So we can't take a measurement from, let's say we couldn't measure from the face of the building around Freddy's to get to 23rd. We would have to measure perpendicularly. We can't do it diagonally. We couldn't measure from, even though it's in the same building, it's a multi-tenant building, we don't take the measurement from CC's or Crunch. We have to take it from the face of Rally House. And unfortunately, when you look at the aerial, it does not have any frontage, street frontage, as defined in the sign code. It faces another lot, so it does not face a public right of way.
Yeah, thank you, Timberly. If it was, because it is visible from 23rd Street, if it was a perpendicular measure of 300 feet, what would the sign size allow then?
It is 75 feet per 100. So it would allow a total sign area of 300 square feet.
Okay, so right now the total that they're asking for is what? I can't call that back up that quick.
216 square feet.
Okay, so it would be basically 85 square feet less than what they're asking for if it was perpendicular to 23rd Street.
Correct. If they had street frontage, then they would be eligible for the setback increase. Yes, and they would be allowed the 300 square feet for one sign, according to code. Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Chairperson Falvey, this is Board Member Harrod. Could I inquire briefly of Mr. Schmidt again?
Chairperson Falvey, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt, I also wanted to take advantage of your experience. I think you told us that you've been working with signs for quite a number of years. Is that right?
That's correct.
In the present situation, and I think that you're also familiar not only with the site, but Lawrence as well. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
So my awareness of this site is, so the proposed front of Rally House, it faces south, is that right?
That's correct.
And it faces across a fairly large parking lot, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
But between the street and the front of the store, we have quite a few obstacles. Is that your understanding?
Well, there is a Freddy's that's pitched at a 45-degree angle, but
And
I
then-
don't.
And then we also have some trees, do we not?
Yeah, that's correct. There's trees, there's visual clutter. That's right.
All right. And there's more than one. I mean, there's numerous trees, right?
Oh, yes, that's correct.
Okay. Does that create a challenging situation as far as having your signage seen?
Yes, I would say that it does. As you're traveling west on 23rd Street at 35 or 40 miles an hour, there'll be moments where you'll see the storefront of Rally House very clearly, and there's a couple seconds or two where the trees and the Freddy's will block it. And
if you, let's say that you're traveling, say, eastbound on 23rd Street, and let's say that you start at Iowa. All right, so you're oriented with me?
yes,
So starting at Iowa, traveling eastbound on 23rd Street, would, as you travel down 23rd Street, just if let me, just tell us, but would many of the businesses that are south and north facing along that street, are they closer to 23rd Street? So therefore their signage would be closer to the street than the building Rally House is going to be in?
yes, you're talking about like the businesses south of 23rd, or you're talking about
South end, north and south side of the road as you go east on 23rd.
Yes, their signs are closer to the 23rd Street. That's true.
So in this case, the building that you're going to be in is actually set back probably, as far as any business on that particular stretch of 23rd Street, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
If not farther.
Correct.
All right. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
This is Chairperson Falvey. I have a follow-up to that for Mr. Schmidt. Behind that parcel to the north, there's a strip mall with a few businesses like Little Sebs. Would that be the same distance from street frontage, that strip?
Are you talking about Yellow Sub? Or
Not in the same strip, but directly to the north. On the aerial plat view, it's 2210. There's a it runs parallel with Iowa, the strip that's set back from because there's two parcels behind your property.
right north of it, there's a Sean's Pub and there's a West Coast Saloon, and I think there's a
Yes.
Yeah. So
That has a similar setback to the property in question. Is that correct?
well, I would say the west elevation of the pub is the same distance from Iowa Street as the west face of CC's Pizza is from Iowa Street. It's a little bit of a different deal there because the Rally House is not in line with, if you draw a straight line north from Rally House, you kind of go to the east of the West Coast Saloon. So the Sean's Pub and West Coast Saloon are closer to Iowa Street just because they're kind of straight north of CC's Pizza, not straight north of Rally House.
And I have one more question. Is there a plan to put a sign in the existing monument tower on 23rd Street or to add a monument sign on Iowa per code allowance?
We inquired about joining the pole sign on 23rd that's currently occupied by Crunch Fitness, and we're told that wouldn't be possible to use that. So we're told that there is a possibility to place a new monument sign out on Iowa in the island that's by that Iowa Street entrance. We were told that that's possible to have a sign there, that where currently there's no sign.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment on this variance request?
I have a question. I don't know if that's not public comment. Well, maybe I am public. I don't know. I might be speaking out of turn.
Chairperson Falvey, you're part of the applicant. What is your question?
Yeah, this is Michael Schmidt of Infinity Signs. My question is, when you're determining perpendicular line of sight from storefront to 23rd Street, where is that perpendicular line drawn? Is it on the center of the entrance doors, or where along that 160-foot storefront do you start drawing that line? Because if you look at a map, a Google map image of how Freddy's is situated, the far eastern corner of Freddy's intersects into a perpendicular line, kind of right of center of where the doors are of Rally House, but it doesn't totally block our whole storefront. It kind of blocks about 52% of it, I would say. So you do have, there's some part of our store that is not blocked at all by Freddy's if you're standing on 23rd. So I don't know how they define where you draw that perpendicular line. I was just curious.
Chairperson Falvey, could we have staff answer that question, please?
Absolutely. Kimberly French, permit technician. So we do a perpendicular line from the storefront. Well, what I looked at when I did this, and most signs that I look at, is from the center of the sign to the property line. So we're not looking at the building, we're looking at the lot line. So if you look at the aerial view of Freddy's lot line, it is perpendicular. It runs, a perpendicular line runs straight into the property line of Freddy's, not necessarily the building. That's where we measure.
Okay.
From, not the building, but it's in the sign code, it's the property line or versus street frontage, public right of way. So it wouldn't be the building itself. Again, it would go with the land, not the building. That building could be taken down at any point in time. So it's the property line that we measure to.
Okay. All right. So it's their property line for Freddy's goes east of their eastern corner of the building, some amount of feet. So, okay.
So
thank you.
Board Member Gardner, I basically had the same question. So I don't see a property line when I'm looking on Google Maps. And it looks to me like you could go perpendicular directly from the, eastern corner of the property that Rally House property out to 23rd Street. So the 300-foot rule could count.
Yeah, this is Board Member Clark looking at the city GIS. The eastern property line of Freddy's extends, it looks like 10 to 20 feet into that Crunch Fitness building space. So it extends quite far into that parking lot.
So what page is that on, Nate?
It's just on the GIS site for the city. I'm sorry, it's a different website.
Oh, okay. I didn't have that.
This is Board Member Harrod. Chairperson Falvey, would this be an okay time for me to inquire of staff, or do you want me to wait until we bring it back to the board for discussion?
Chairperson Falvey, is it pertinent to what we've been discussing, or should we get public comment first?
Yeah, let's hear public comment if there is some.
Chairperson Falvey, staff, is there any public comment or anyone signed up to speak?
Staff liaison Catherine Week, in the City Hall chamber. There is no one here for public comment.
Luke Mortensen, PDS. I do not see any Zoom public comments either.
Chairperson Falvey, thank you, staff. Board Member Harrod, would you like to start off back with our discussion?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairperson Falvey. This question is for staff. So let me tee this up so that everybody knows where I'm going and why I'm asking these questions. So we have statutes, we have laws, and in this case we have, a sign code so that there's predictability within, usage of property by the owners, by the public. And so I've heard a few times tonight about there's been some changes to our sign code possibly. So that's the first part of my question is, have there been some changes? And then secondly, I think everybody sees where I'm going, where I would prefer that we treat merchants, similarly situated merchants, similarly. And in this case, it's clear to me that the former merchant occupying the space had a lot of signage in play. And now we have the present applicant that is a merchant, similarly situated, wanting to go into the space, is not being treated similarly. And so I'm wondering if staff can help me through that conundrum.
Staff Liaison Catherine Week. I'm going to speak strictly to like not just the sign code, but all codes and regulations that we have on the books for the city of Lawrence. So they do change periodically. New codes get adopted. It happens with zoning codes, sign codes, building codes. And as those things change, new regulations may come on the books. And the expectation is that new developments or new projects will come into compliance with the new regulations on the books. So in regards to treating all applicants fairly, all applicants are treated the same for applications at the time they are submitted. So I will put that out there. Yeah.
This is Board Member Harrod, and as an attorney, I'm well aware of how statutes, codes change over time, and I've even authored changes to statutes and codes during my history, during my career. My question here then, so let's walk it back a little bit. So apparently there has been some changes, some relevant changes to our sign code. Is that right?
Correct. Timberly French, permit technician. The sign code officially changed in September of 2017 with some amendments then to that newly adopted sign code in 2018. So it has an entire new code was established and adopted in 2017.
Okay, so it wasn't a super recent change. It sounds like it's been almost 5 years ago. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
And if you can answer this, please do. But under the former sign code that presumably the Cork and Barrel, Wine and Spirits, Gourmet, and then the changeable sign, on the side of Crunch Fitness. So was that plethora of signage, was that permissible under our former code?
Timberly French, permit technician. I do not know. I was not a member of staff reviewing signs under that old code. I came in 2019 under the new code. So unfortunately, I don't know. The only one I do know is that the changeable message board that they're referring to, that was allowed under the old sign code and is no longer, it's a prohibited sign under the new sign code.
And that kind of goes to one of my questions where that changeable board felt a little Wild West. Like, I'm wondering if that was if anybody even pulled permit to put that up or if it just showed up.
I could definitely check. I did not check the files on the Cork and Barrel signage from that time.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Chairperson Falvey, Board Member Harrod, have you finished your comments?
Yes, thank you.
Is there any other board member who'd like to speak on this agenda item? Chairperson or Board Member Clark.
This is Board Member Clark. I think of the three kind of variances here, I'm going to speak specifically to the second one about the total square footage, and just speak that I feel like they're just in a tight spot. We talked about this based on my measurements here. They're 300 feet from their storefront is 300 feet from the storefront, or from 23rd Street, which at 75 square feet per 100 feet puts that at 215 square feet of permissible signscape. If Freddy's wasn't there, or if the city measured instead to the building envelope of Freddy's and not to the property line of Freddy's. And so I would just say that I think the 215 square feet or 216 square feet instead of 150, that seems reasonable to me based on the kind of the unique conditions of where that building is set and where Freddy's is set in front of them, and how Freddy's makes a weird interpretation of what that code is.
Board Member Gardner, I agree with Nate.
This is Board Member Harrod. I would have to concur, and I would also have to opine once again that when code, statutes, regulations change, there's always the law of unintended consequences. So that's kind of a law in and of itself. And I think I can perceive what the city was trying to do, but at the same time, I think it sounds like they were narrowing things, but by doing so, they are creating some situations that create some hardships for some merchants, like merchants that sit farther back off of the main street than I think any other merchant, you know, between Iowa Street and Mass on 23rd Street. Other merchants aren't dealing with whole other businesses and trees sitting between them. And so we have to start looking at the hardships and the uniqueness that creates. And I'll just telegraph, I'm finding lots of hardship and uniqueness. And I'll also tell you that as far as if we were to allow these signs as proposed, I find the staff recommendation that would be deleterious to the neighborhood. I'd find that without merit. I mean, it's already happened. It's happening. I mean, up until Cork and Barrel moved across the street. I think that there was a purpose for the signs being here as they were. And I wonder if when the sign code was changed, they were looking at some other parts of town rather than right here. So once again, unintended consequences.
Chairperson Falvey, am I allowed to speak to any of that, or?
If you're called upon, you can.
Sorry. Okay.
Chairperson Falvey, Board Member Harrod, have you finished your comment?
I have, thank you.
Timberly, can you speak to those comments, please?
Sure, thank you so much. Timberly French, permit technician. I just wanted to state that Cork and Barrel did move across the street to 1801 West 23rd. It's one of the buildings I mentioned in the staff report in a multi-tenant building. They now have one sign that's compliant with the new sign code. So when Cork and Barrel moved, they did move into the same zoning district, a multi-tenant building. They have one sign that's under their allowable 150 square feet. So I just wanted to mention that. And then with the trees and other obstacles, if there were, you know, with the line of sight, with the street frontage, if that wasn't an issue, they would not need an increase in the number of signs or the square footage of signs if they had a direct line of sight to 23rd Street. We're talking about trees and other obstacles, but we're all saying that we can clearly see the signs from 23rd Street and Iowa Street. So I feel like the way that we measure setback to property line is standard across the board, how we have to measure every sign that comes across in an application, to make an exception for signs that are clearly visible from 23rd Street and Iowa Street, to make an exception to the allowance for an increase, I feel like is unfair to other tenants that we've had to deny, other signs that weren't approved. They didn't go through the variance process because they, you know, this property doesn't have a street frontage as defined in the sign code, and we measure from that street frontage. And if you can clearly see the signs from 23rd and Iowa streets, then there should be no reason for an increase to the number of signs or the area of sign if it's clearly visible. And that's all. Thank you.
Chairperson Falvey, I'm looking at the GIS, and so when you're figuring out, speaking of the new Cork and Barrel location, that perpendicular, it looks like it runs into the Starbucks lot line. Is that where it has a similar condition?
The similar condition would be that it is moved from a multi-tenant lot in CS zoning to a multi-tenant lot in CS zoning. So where it was located before in this Rally House location at 2000 West 23rd Street, it had multiple signs. That would be a reason that, that staff is board members are looking at allowing for an increase to the number of signs. Because the previous Cork and Barrel had these conditions under the old sign code. It would have been grandfathered in had they remained in that spot. When they changed spots to the same zoning district in a multi-tenant building, I believe that Cork and Barrel shares a space with, it's a tool.
Harbor Freight.
Yes, thank you so much. So it is a multi-tenant building, so it is subject to the same requirements as Rally House with 150 square feet, one sign per tenant with the shared parking area.
Thank you. Chairperson Falvey, is there any other board members that like to comment on this agenda item?
Board Member Shelinski, I understand the concerns of some of the other board members about the visibility problems and the difficulties. But I'm also looking at the fact that there is the availability of monument signage, which could help with visibility from both 23rd and from Iowa.
This is Chairperson Falvey. I echo Barry's comments as well. Any other board members have comments on this agenda item? Would anyone like to make a motion?
This is Board Member Harrod. I would move to approve the variance as requested by the applicant.
Board Member
Clark, seconding.
Chairperson Falvey, we have a motion and a second. Staff, could you please call the roll?
Or Staff Liaison Catherine Week. Clark.
Aye.
Falvey.
Nay.
Gardner.
Aye.
Harrod.
Aye.
Rankin.
Aye.
Shelinski.
Nay.
Weisner.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Chairperson Falvey, we're going to move on to our second agenda item under the public hearing of the Sign Code Board of Appeals. This is to consider a variance application SB 22-00001 for the property located at 4000 West 6th Street. And the request is for a variance from the maximum allowed sign area of section 5-1818B. For permanent signs in neighborhood commercial center CN2 zoning districts. I'll ask staff to present on this agenda item.
Timberly French, permit technician, presenting for Commerce Bank signage for a detached standalone ATM at 4000 West 6th Street. The applicant's request is to place a 34.64 square foot projecting wall sign that is attached to the Commerce Bank ATM structure. The structure itself has a wall area of 69.14 square feet. And as Board Member Falvey said, the property is zoned CN2. The sign code allows one sign per tenant on wall with exterior public entrance to tenant space that fronts a shared parking area. Otherwise, unlimited number of signs on walls where signs are allowed. This proposed sign is one sign proposed on the ATM canopy. The sign area for this zoning district is 10% of the building wall area maximum, or 150 square feet, whichever is less. And for each 100 foot increment, the building wall is set back from a right of way. The base area may be increased by 50%. The total surface of the wall area of the ATM canopy structure in the elevation view is 69.14 square feet. 10% of the building wall area is equal to 6.91 square feet. The maximum sign area is 6.91 square feet for allowable sign area. The ATM canopy structure is set back from the public right-of-way 62.6 square feet and is not eligible for an increase in allowed sign area. The total proposed sign area for projecting wall sign is 34.64 square feet. The sign location for this zoning district allowed by code is for any building wall facing or fronting a public right-of-way or parking lot or other open space under the same ownership with at least 50 lineal feet between the building wall and the next building. The proposed wall sign is located on the south wall of the ATM canopy structure facing 6th Street, which is a public right-of-way. The sign code does allow internally and externally illuminated signage, and this proposed wall sign is illuminated. The criteria for approval for the variance, we did read through that on the last. Number one, at the time a variance is requested by the board shall find that the variance request arises from conditions that are unique to the location in question, which are not ordinarily found in the same zoning district, and that the unique conditions are not caused or created by an action or actions of the property owner or applicant. At the time a variance is granted by the board shall find that the granting of the variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare, including the visual appearance of the area, or injurious to property or improvements in such zoning districts or the neighborhood in which the property is located. And at the time a variance is granted by the board shall find that the strict application of the requirements of Article 18, Chapter 5 of the City Code would result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships to the owner or applicant inconsistent with general purpose and intent of the sign code. Such practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships may include compliance with amended provisions of the sign code that were not in effect at the time a predecessor sign was installed. Staff is of the opinion that the request does meet the criteria for granting of a variance. In the opinion of staff, conditions exist which are unique to the location and which are not ordinarily found in the same zoning district. It's not uncommon to find detached ATM structures accessory to the financial institution in which they serve in the CN2 Neighborhood Commercial Center zoning district. However, this Commerce Bank ATM structure is not accessory to a financial institution, but is the primary structure representing the financial institution and is eligible to receive signage that enables the public to locate the facility effectively and efficiently. The proposed sign would be attached to the ATM canopy structure above the canopy as a projecting wall sign to identify the financial institution for both users in the public right-of-way and from the parking lot in which it's located. Because the ATM canopy structure is required for the users of the ATM itself and not constructed for the purposes of displaying signage, the exterior surface of the ATM canopy structure is considered a wall. and subject to the dimensional standards for computing the allowable wall sign area in accordance with the sign code, section 5-1816C, which reads, the area of the wall or window area for the purposes of determining an allowed percentage shall be the total surface of the wall or window visible in an elevation view. In the opinion of staff, the granting of a variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements to the neighborhood. The granting of the variance to allow an increase in wall sign area from 6.91 square feet to 34.64 square feet would not pose any negative effects on neighboring properties or other structures on the same lot. The 34.64 square foot projecting wall sign located on the ATM canopy structure would not cause obstruction of access or views or visual blight to the neighborhood or surrounding properties and is similar in scale to allowable wall signs located in adjoining zoning districts. And finally, in the opinion of staff, the strict application of the requirements of the sign code result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships inconsistent with the general purpose and intent of the code. Because the ATM canopy structure is very limited in wall area, an increase to the allowable sign size may be beneficial in order to permit a sign of appropriate design, scale, and placement such that it will be appropriately conspicuous, visible, and legible, which is the intent of the sign code. Adhering to the prescriptive requirements of the sign code for the maximum wall sign area for the uniquely designed and placed ATM structure may result in practical difficulties and would go against the goal of the governing body to permit efficient identification and communication for commercial enterprises by restricting the structure to a 6.91 square foot sign, which may not be effective to users in the public right of way. Staff recommends approval of the variance for the increase in allowable sign area for the wall sign because the conditions are unique to the user and structure. The requested variance will not be detrimental to the public welfare, and strict application of the sign code regulations would cause practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships to the applicant. Thank you.
Chairperson Falvey, thank you, staff. Is the property owner or representative on the call to speak? And wishing to speak?
This is Charlotte Gamino. I'm with the sign company, Shirley Signs, for this variance. There really isn't much more that I can attest to besides what Kimberly just went through, except that it does pose, without this, the bank does have some concerns about safety concerns and the liability that they do not want to be responsible for if they're not granted this variance. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening. This is John Hipple with Sign Designs. We are the canopy manufacturer and sign vendor for Commerce Bank. We also have Brent Hall and Brad Bolton with Commerce Bank joining the call. We partner with Shirley Signs on the installation, and to echo those comments, Ms. French really outlined the request for variance very well. So not to really add too much to that, it's just a unique situation, and so we're here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you.
This is Board Member Shalinski. I have a couple questions. Is what is being requested in the application different from the current state of the facility as it sits right now? Because when I went out there and looked at it, it appears that what's being requested is what is currently there. Am I wrong?
That is correct. It is exactly what you saw there on site.
So in other words, it was built prior to this variance being granted.
That is correct. I think, I guess my best explanation of that is just the application for the ATM canopy, the structure itself, and the contracting permit. We understood, or we thought that that was including the sign area on the canopy, and in turn it did not. So we then worked with Shirley Signs and Ms. French to apply for the variance as you see it.
Okay, thank you. And then this question is for staff. Is there not a freestanding ATM for Bank of America at Clinton Parkway and Castle?
Timberly French, permit technician. Yes, there is a freestanding ATM at Clinton Parkway and Castle. I don't believe it's CN2 zoning. I could be wrong. I'm so sorry, everyone. I lost some kind of connection to my Zoom, so I can't use my video or my keyboard, so I cannot look anything up on a map unless I probably shut down. So I'm not able to look up the zoning for that freestanding canopy. I'm sorry, freestanding ATM sign.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
This is Board Chairperson Falvey. Do we have any public to speak on this agenda item?
Staff liaison Catherine Week. There is no public commenters in the City Commission room.
Luke, is there anyone signed up to speak on this?
Luke Mortensen, Planning Development Services. I am not seeing any Zoom comments.
Chairperson Falvey, I'll bring it back to the board for discussion then.
Board Member Gardner, I see no reason not to approve, so I'd move to approve the variance to deviate from the provisions of section 5-1818B, restrictions of zoning district for permanent wall sign for CN2 zoning districts of the Code of the City of Lawrence, Kansas, 2018 edition. And that's to approve the variance request for 34.64 square foot projecting wall sign attached to the Commerce Bank ATM canopy structure, which has a wall area of 69.14 square feet. Based on the staff's finding that the conditions are unique to the user and structure, the requested variance will not be detrimental to the public welfare, and strict application of the sign code regulations would cause practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships to the applicant.
Board Member Weisner, second.
This is Chairperson Falvey. We have a motion and a second. Staff, could you please call the roll?
Staff liaison Catherine Week. Clark.
Aye.
Falvey.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Harrod.
Aye.
Rankin.
Aye.
Shalinski.
Aye.
Weisner.
Aye.
And the motion carries.
Chairperson Falvey, this concludes the public hearing portion. Staff, is there anything to be under miscellaneous tonight?
Staff liaison Catherine Week. I do not have any miscellaneous items for the Sign Code Board of Appeals.
Do we have any other miscellaneous items, or do I have a motion to adjourn the Sign Code Board of Appeals from a board member?
Board Member Gardner, I wanted to congratulate you, Madam Chairman. And this is your first one, right?
It is. Thank you.
Well done. And then I'd move for adjournment.
Board Member Shalinski, second.
Chairperson
Second on the
Falvey.
comment as well as the motion.
Thank you. We've got a motion and a second. Staff, could you please read the roll?
Yep. Staff liaison Catherine Week. Clark.
Aye.
Falvey.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Harrod.
Aye.
Rankin.
Aye.
Shalinski.
Aye.
Weisner.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Motion carries.
Great job, Bethany. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you,
good night.
everybody.
Good night, everyone.
See you next time.
All right.